Good afternoon. This is Jim Fallon, Assistant Chief Engineer at DOT and Bureau of Engineering and Construction. So today I'm going to give you a short overview of the capital plan to supplement the report and narrative that we'll be posting. All right, next slide. So here's a little bit of the overview of the topics and the areas that we'll cover. So I'll give a little bit of a summary of what the capital plan is and what it means. We'll talk a little bit about funding of the capital plan and some of the financials behind it, and then talk about major initiatives, programs, and projects that we have ongoing at the department and that are contained within the capital plan. Next slide. So first we'll do the overview. Next slide. So a little bit about transportation documents and how they relate to one another and what's contained within each one of them. So some of you may be familiar with the long range plan. That's more of a vision document, certainly encompasses more than 20 years. We also have a tip and stip that is more at the regional level, as well as a MTP that's also at the regional level, and that really looks at maybe the next 5 to 10 years and more at a regional level as opposed to a statewide level, and then those all get incorporated. And then a capital plan is produced by the department annually. Basically what we do is we drop the first year of the capital plan and then add a year to the end, and we'll talk a little bit about the purpose of the capital plan and what's contained within it. Next slide. So the capital plan is, like I said, it's an annual report. It generally covers a 5-year period. It talks about all of our major initiatives and how they're proposed to be funded, the level of funding, the various programs that they're contained within, and how also has some general narrative talking about major initiatives, topics that we are interested in, such as complete streets and some of those things. And then it's important to note that the data that's presented within the plan, because federal funds make up such a large component of our funding at the department, it is based on the federal fiscal year, which is October through September. Go to the next slide. A little bit about the roadmap to the capital plan. So projects can be identified from a multitude of different areas. So whether that's from a safety, there's an accident issue that needs to be addressed. There's a congestion issue that needs to be addressed. Sometimes these come out of corridor studies. They're identified by the regions or the COGs, municipal officials, local elected officials. There's a multitude of ways the projects are identified. Then we generally categorize the projects into different groups. So some projects are pretty straightforward. So we're going to do a bridge rehab or traffic signal improvement. They're generally smaller in scale. And then we may have some large initiatives which need to be planned and thought about over a large period of time. And they may not, they become projects and we initiate the design phase, but they may not turn into construction projects for some period of time. It's always important for us to apply metrics and performance measures, make sure that we're heading in the right direction. We always engage in various ways with our stakeholders to get their input and feedback. And then we look at what, especially in the federal side, there's eligibility requirements. And so then we look for what's the best way to program that project and fit it into the various categories or to utilize state funds. And then it has a presence in the capital plan. So by the time you're looking, typically when you're looking at a project that is in the capital plan, it's gone through these various steps and is ready to go and proceed. So next slide. So we'll talk a little bit of funding and how projects are paid for. So going across the bottom here, shown in blue, is it's a federal funding level. So typically that has been about $1 billion a year. That's made up of federal highway, FRA, FDA funds. You'll see the increase in 2022 that was a result of the bipartisan infrastructure law and IJA. So that went from about 950 million to $1.3 billion. There's a large increase in 2023. So as noted, we did, and I'll talk a little bit about it later, receive some additional discretionary funds through NEC and a Fed state partnership. So that increased our federal funds anticipated in 2023 from $1.3 billion to $2.3 billion. Those projects, which we'll also talk about later, don't happen instantly. So those will proceed over the next several years. And then shown in red are the state funds are used either to pay for projects directly or are used as a match for the federal funds. Go to the next slide. So just a little bit of, in addition to the increase in the formula funds that was authorized by the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law or IJA, there's also a significant opportunity to get discretionary federal funds. So that's certainly a priority for the department. We set up a separate grants unit. This is a competitive process, so certainly good that the department and the state has been successful. These are grants that we have been successful in receiving, from $158 million for the Gold Star Bridge to some other funds on the Waterbury line, as well as some battery electric bus and a multitude of other discretionary grants. Go to the next slide. So as I noted, when we're talking about the 2023 funding, we were successful as part of the federal state partnership program and getting almost $2 billion coming to the state. 800 and something million is for Amtrak managed projects, as noted on the top. And then there's another $1.1 billion approximately that is for department managed projects. Those are significant improvements are going to be made on the New Haven line, as well as the Hartford line, and various rail improvements throughout the state. So that's a significant investment, and those projects will proceed over the next 5 to 10 years or so. Go to the next slide. So one way that we measure whether, how we're doing in terms of expanding the program and utilizing the funds that are provided through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law is to look at how our expenditures are going, capital expenditures. So this is an indicator of funds that are being utilized to support either the design, the rights of way, the construction, and making sure that we're putting the dollars to use, if you will. So you will see that in 2020, we were somewhere around $1.5 billion annually that were being expended towards capital projects. In 2023, that has increased to $2 billion annually, and we expect that number to increase as we go along, as we get more capital projects utilizing the funds out on the street. So we're certainly trending in the right direction. Next slide. This is a summary of capital projects, committed construction dollars. So shown in blue are the typical design, bid, build, state advertised projects. So you can see that that number is somewhere in the neighborhood of about 950 million annually. So those are new projects that are starting, that are underway. In green are the maintenance, some of the vendor in place projects, the paving, the BRU bridge projects and things of that nature. And then shown in the darker blue are all the municipal grants and the local projects. So annually committed construction dollars somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.3 billion. That's a fairly significant increase from where we were a couple of years ago, and we certainly strive to maintain that level of funding and getting projects out the door. Go to the next slide. So another, utilizing the same data and just talking about the number of projects or opportunities, contracting opportunities that are provided by those dollars. So somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 different projects, opportunities, getting vendors, getting contractors, working on projects, and putting putting folks to work. I will note that both this slide and the previous one does not include alternative contracting, so design, build, and those projects typically somewhere $200 to $300 million annually that we're putting out in alternative contracting. Good, next slide. Okay, so now I'll talk a little bit about major initiatives, programs, and projects. Next slide. So first, as I noted, the department, we've been working on complete streets and really it's a quality of life issue for a period of time, but we've increased our efforts in this area over the last year. And so that takes various forms. It's, different opportunities. So whether we're working on it through Division Zero Council, we did put out some controlling design criteria so that all of our projects are taking a closer look at complete streets and some of the ways that we can provide better access or both on the pedestrian side and for bicyclists. We have a new active transportation unit, which is advising us and supporting us. And some of the ways that we support some of these initiatives are through programs such as community connectivity. Obviously, the federal TA program has been available for a number of years, and these projects can also be supported through the LOTSIP program. Go to the next slide. Another major effort on the department side are PELS, or Planning Environmental Linkages Studies. So these are planning studies. Basically, these are ongoing throughout the state, as you can see from the list. Many of them are in different stages of development. So Greater Hartford Mobility Study, which I'll talk a little bit about on future slides, is basically wrapped up. But we're looking at I-84 in Danbury. We have 95 in Greenwich and Stamford, as well as east of New Haven, and other areas, the new mix, the Waterbury Mixmaster, and other areas throughout the state. So these projects are important for us because they give us ideas and recommendations for what we should do within those areas, and then to be able to plan for the future. Next slide. So I talked about the Greater Hartford Mobility Study. Like I said, the PEL process at least has completed. I would suggest that if you want detailed information, certainly go to the website for more information, but I'll just give you a little bit of an overview. It was a mobility study, so it's looking at all modes of transportation. It was regionally focused, so not just looking at 84 and 91 or the Hartford area, but we want to take a little bit more of a global look at things. CityLink West, which is shown in blue, basic improvements or goals over in that area include lowering of the highway, trying to make some bus and rail improvements, connecting the neighborhoods that were severed by the highway and trying to reconnect those. CityLink East, which is shown in orange, really the goal there, or the idea, is to relocate the 84 and 91 interchange up to the north of Hartford. So rather than it occurring right in the middle of Hartford, another advantage of that proposal is to utilize the Bulkley Bridge more as a local connection. So we'll get highway traffic or through traffic off of there and make that more of a local connection. River Gateway, which is shown in pink, that's really about connecting the central business district with the water, with the river. There's also some opportunities to lower I-91 as we go through that area, and to try to enhance some connections between Hartford and East Hartford. So that's the River Gateway portion shown in pink. And then the Founders Gateway over on the East Hartford side, so that hopes to simplify some of the connections between 84 and Route 2 to provide significant opportunities for redevelopment, as you can see towards the river area as we simplify that interchange. So those all working together would be the vision, if you will, for what the Greater Hartford Mobility Study and what the area may look like. in the future. And those projects are multi-year initiatives in some time away, but this does at least set the vision and what we're trying to achieve in this area. The next slide. So as part of the Greater Hartford Mobility Study, and you know, frankly, for all the PELs that I listed before, one of the reasons that we like them or like the process is that it does allow us to do some smaller scale improvements while perhaps the larger improvement is a little ways in the future. So there's about 30 early action projects that are of various scales, and so some of those are listed here. And so hopefully we can show some improvements in the area, like I said, before we get to the longer and the larger scale program and improvements. Go to the next slide. So talk a little bit about just generally within the capital plan, some of the municipal projects and programs, and these all have a presence. They continue to have a presence. So whether we're talking about state and local bridges, off-system bridges, some of the projects and programs that are eligible within STPU. CMAQ is another program that can provide some local traffic signal improvements. That's been around signal systems. That's about a $35–40 million program. And the TA program is one that supports complete streets. So that's certainly a regularly programmed projects and has been around for a period of time. And then we also have our grant programs, community connectivity, LOTSIP and TRIP. So those are, you know, LOTSIP's a $75 million annual program, and community connectivity is about $12 million annually. The next slide. A little bit of highlights, and again, as part of the capital plan report, there is a listing of projects, fairly extensive, so it's very difficult to give highlights. So I would suggest that it's organized by town. Perhaps you're interested in what's going on in your municipality. So if you're so inclined to go and take a look at them, but here are some of the highlights. So we're going to be within the next couple of years looking at a reconstruction of the 7 and 15 interchange, looking at the Route 9 traffic signals. 44 retaining wall project in Norfolk will be ongoing in construction this year. There's a series of projects that are planned for I-91 and I-691. 2 of the 3 phases are active in construction and ongoing for the 95 improvements at interchange 74. Throughout, there's a series of trail and complete streets projects like I talked about, whether it's in the TA program and projects of that nature. And always an emphasis area is maintaining our bridge infrastructure and making sure that we're keeping those in good condition. And so there's a series of bridge projects located throughout the state, and some of those are fairly significant, especially the Gold Star Bridge improvements and the ongoing Swing Bridge improvements in East Haddam. Next slide. A little bit of a summary in terms of alternative contracting projects. So like I mentioned, the value of our regular design bid build program. So these are alternative contracting, typically design build. There's a number of projects that are in either procurement, the contractor and the design team have been selected, but it's still in design, and then projects that are active in construction. And then the Walk-Movable Bridge project is active in construction. That's you know, in excess of $1 billion program, and that is ongoing. So these are also some additional opportunities and projects that are underway using alternative contracting. Next slide. Hitting a little bit on public transportation in addition to the highway and bridge. So I talked about a number of improvements that are going to be supported through the federal state partnership and the NEC discretionary funds that we received. but there's a number of proposed improvements, continuing the double tracking, north of Hartford, a new Enfield station, a series of improvements along the Waterbury line with stations and things of that nature. Proposed to do some improvements to key stations in Stamford and New Haven, as well as some fleet improvements and additions with locomotives and coaches. And then the time program, which is a multi-year initiative to hope to provide time, speed improvements, try to reduce, I should say, the commute time to New York City and throughout the New Haven line. So that's the time program. It's a series of improvements that we're also advancing. Next slide. So on the public transportation bus side, a number of improvements, certainly electrification and battery electric bus is something that we're moving forward with. And one of the certainly the bus stop enhancement program. So let's try to provide better amenities at bus stops and provide some protection for people as they're waiting for the bus, and then move New Haven, which is down in the New Haven area, and try to enhance transportation within the city. Go to the next slide. So a little bit of additional materials if you are interested. There's a number of online resources, like we talked about the capital plan and reports and some of the studies. A lot of the studies and plans are what leads to projects, quarter studies, things of that nature, and then eventually we get into the capital plan. If you're looking for major project updates, I would encourage you to go to that link. And then for just general information, you can always go to the federal agencies to get some background information. Go to the next slide. So I hope that you found this summary a little bit helpful in addition to the narrative and the project listings, but certainly we welcome your feedback and try to incorporate it into future versions of the plan. I would also encourage you to participate when we have project briefings that for those that you might be interested in or located in your municipality. That's your opportunity to provide your personal feedback on what most impacts you. So with that, I thank you for your time and look forward to any questions or feedback that you may want to offer. Thank you.